Years ago, I worked as a head of product management. And one of the things that I loved about working in products was working in Agile. And I know I sound like a nerd here, but what I really loved was having intentional time in your workflow to just pause and reflect. And I think as humans, we're not still enough, full stop. So having a space called a retrospective where we can, as a team, not focus on what we've been working on, but rather how we've been working together, I think is critical for any high-performing team. And I love to start those kind of retro sessions with just asking fun questions like how's your energy been over the last 2 weeks? And just let people just chart, even with emojis, how their energy has been drained or what's giving them energy over the last 2-week period of work. And then go into kind of reflective questions like what's worked well, what hasn't worked so well, and what would we do differently? And it opens up such a beautiful reflective question to help us continuously evolve and improve as a team. I think it was inspired actually by that Japanese concept of Kaizen and continuous improvement in manufacturing. But actually, all of those small steps really add up and compound in a big way. And I know you love retros as well, so why don't you share a bit?
I love retros. And by the way, if you're listening to this and thinking, oh God, another meeting we have to fit in and convince our team to find valuable, I think the key with retros is they're about what changes after the session. So what I often see, particularly with big corporates, particularly I'm afraid to say with corporates who have a lot of people who have belts in Agile, right, or lean, black belt, etc., you get a lot more performance around Agile, a lot more structure, new buzzwords, new meetings that start to actually feel like they're draining your team's energy and not delivering real change. And one of the things I always want to work on with teams who are doing Agile is how are you avoiding falling back into old patterns where you're setting out all the risks up front, you're having these retrospectives which allow you to just talk about what's happened, but then you go back to the exact plan you had before the meeting. So for me, retros are about a possibility for intervention, to take on board the learning, to see how does this update our assumptions, and then what do we need to do differently. And I think the danger is if you just put it in as a meeting and don't think, what do I want people to get out of this individually? So I love that question of where do you get your energy? How are you changing how you're working personally as a result of this? But also, how does it change as a team what we're testing? What our hypothesis is about what will work, what we have to focus on now, what the next thing that might kill this initiative is. If you don't do that, then you're just running what we call waterfall, designing everything up front, and then it just flows on by another name. And it upsets me because I see so many teams falling out of love with Agile because what they're practicing isn't real Agile, or it's an overcomplicated version. And to be honest, most teams who aren't doing complicated software or manufacturing development don't need a complex version of Agile. They need something simple. And even in a retro, I often just have 3 categories: good, bad, better. What worked, what didn't work, what can we do better? And I love that point of making sure it's not just about the learnings on the idea, but also the learnings on you and your ways of working, and how can we build love for that as a team so that when you're leaving the meeting, you think, okay, this changes something. And then your team see value in it and want to keep coming back for them.
Yeah, you actually just reminded me, because you're just as passionate or even more than me, but the importance of having ownership. Who's owning what actions at the end of that retrospective meeting? Because once you have ownership, then you're going to take responsibility, because you know in 2 weeks' time, when we get back to having another retro, one of the questions are going to be, what actions have you taken since the last retrospective? So again, that drives a culture of ownership and responsibility so that you take that continuous action.
And I'd love to see, if I could have one tweak to retros, I'd love to see leaders asking in them, what are the skills and learnings you want to get over the next 2 weeks? What do you want to test that maybe isn't innately easy or you don't feel super confident in, but the next 2 weeks could be a learning potential for you as well as what we're learning about the idea, so that, again, you're showing your team in action, not just in words, and want to support your growth.
We could go down different avenues here, stretching people, visible role modeling, but I think that's enough for now in retros.